Okay, this is where you want to get to, right?
That is the question.
Okay. So, first, we need to make sure that they understand what a question is. Okay, the nature of a request for information along with a response. Then, we need to clarify the difference between a specific you and a collective you, because we don't want to know why Joe Alien is here. We want to know why they all landed. And purpose requires an understanding of intent. We need to find out, do they make conscious choices, or is their motivation so instinctive that they don't understand a why question at all? And biggest of all, we need to have enough vocabulary with them that we understand their answer.
Forget it. Stick to your list. Just don't add anything to it.
Welcome to the Bread and Thorns podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Bread and Thorns podcast, a bi-weekly podcast where we sit down and discuss literature, art, media, and all the other stuff that we really like and how they influence the projects that we're working on. I'm Isaac.
And I'm Rosemary.
And today we are going to discuss
Arrival.
Arrival is a 2016 American science fiction film directed by Denis Villeneuve. And he is such a great director that I actually went up online to YouTube yesterday to learn how to pronounce his French name.
Oh.
So
nice.
It is Denis Villeneuve, apparently, because the French do not know how to use vowels.
Or letters. Or numbers.
Or anything, really.
The French, it's just aesthetic.
Yeah. He is French-Canadian, so there is a...
so he's just like a slightly nicer French person.
Oh, is that what the French Canadians are known for?
I
I don't know.
I just know that French people are usually considered like mean snob people or like...
High class. It's not snobby. It's high class. It's
you can
noble.
Say it what you want. You can say it how you want.
Posh.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I mean, it's not like, English knows how to use vowels either. I think
Yeah,
only the
but
Spanish
English
really
admits
do.
it. English admits that we're a hodgepodge language, and it's beautiful and magnificent, and one of the reasons why I like this movie.
It's been
because they talk
only about
that.
40 seconds into the podcast, and already Rosemary has used the word beautiful.
Because English,
We should do
English
a drinking game at this point. Sorry, it's been a minute.
It's afternoon now. Technically, we can drink now without feeling ashamed of ourselves.
I mean, you can drink without feeling ashamed of yourself, I guess.
I don't even know if I could at this point. Maybe someone else will have to do it for me. So yes, English is a beautiful language, and it's also really cool with this movie. Because so we're just gonna jump into it. So one of my favorite things with this movie is that like the main character is a linguist. And it's
don't spoil it yet because we haven't really done the summary. So a small summary.
Okay.
So
Yes.
let me continue. Arrival is a 2016 film. It is based on a short story from 1998 by Ted Chiang. It's called The Story of Your Life. And it stars Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, and Forrest Whitaker. Forrest Whitaker's accent actually comes out at the end of this movie. It was really interesting because he did a really great job all the way up until that one scene, and then his accent just comes out, and I was like, oh, that was a...
I wonder if they did the take multiple times, or if they were just like, nope, we're done.
It's probably...
They probably did it in the beginning of the movie, didn't they?
Well, in the film process, that probably means that it was a post-production reshoot. Although I don't know. I didn't look that part up because I didn't care that much. I just thought it was really funny that he was clearly American and then suddenly he's not at that one scene at the end. And I guess he just didn't care. Or the audiologists didn't care. Maybe there's actually because this film is about language, maybe there's actually some kind of director's hand involved in that. We never know. Anyways, according to Wikipedia, the film follows a linguist enlisted by the United States Army to discover how to communicate with extraterrestrial aliens who have arrived on Earth before tensions lead to war. And that is the Wikipedia summary of this
so gorgeous
movie.
It's so well done.
You have not seen this movie prior to us
I have never seen this movie
list
before in my life, and I'm actually a little bit sad. But also, it's a bittersweet moment because it's like I'm sad that I've never seen it before. I'm also really happy that I got to watch it. So,
yeah. At what point did you realize I'm so happy to be watching this movie?
Well,
There's a lot of parts, obviously.
Yeah, because
the plot is very simple, right?
I love the music. So like it actually started with the violin in the beginning, and I was like, oh, I really like this. Okay.
This brought little funny fact. Well, not really a funny fact. It's more of a interesting fact, I think. The soundtrack for this movie was going to be, I believe, nominated for best soundtrack, something like that.
Interesting.
But the first track that you hear is not by the person who composed for the film. It's by a man named Max Richter, and the first that violin or cello that you hear is "The Nature of Daylight," and it's a very, very famous piece actually by Max Richter. It's one of his more famous, and then this movie made it even more famous. And so
it's really good.
Yeah, it's very iconic.
The Nature
now.
of Daylight.
The Nature of Daylight. Max Richter is I would say, he's a composer, but he's more involved in like electronic producing or modern contemporary styles of producing. But he adds these kinds of he has
influences.
Yeah, he has a lot of classical influences in his work.
It was gorgeous the entire way through. Like I was genuinely I kept coming. Well, no.
He
but
didn't
like
write
the music
for the intro
movie.
music.
So like the intro music that was done by him is gorgeous.
Right.
But like the whole movie
is
was
not
still,
by him.
That's fine. My point is, I liked the movie pretty much when it started. I was still a little like, I wasn't hooked on the story part until until the hospital. That was when I was like, oh.
The hospital.
That first hospital scene.
In the first scene.
In the first
where
thing,
the child has passed away.
Yeah. No. Before that, when they're pressing her throat, I was like, no. And so I was like, instantly it was like, this is why Isaac likes this movie.
No,
it's depressing.
that was not why I liked
and
the
then,
movie.
okay, to be fair, I've never seen this movie before, so I had like the true, pure experience of I had no idea how the movie was gonna end.
Right.
And
just
so,
for our listeners, I'm going to summarize this movie very quickly.
Spoiler summary. Do the spoiler summary.
I'm not going to do the spoiler summary as much. We will be talking about spoilers later, but just because if you haven't seen this movie, this is one of those movies that more than some of the movies on my top 10, I would suggest watching before you. The spoiler of this movie is not. How do I say this? It hits you really hard, and it doesn't really.
It's like A Beautiful Mind.
Yes, yeah, it's like A Beautiful Mind, and
which is a movie I will hopefully never watch.
It's something that you would want to. I would say you would want to experience rather than hear someone say it.
So I guess the point is, if you haven't watched Arrival. And okay, I didn't have this attitude before I watched this movie. I now have this attitude having watched the movie. Isaac has been telling me to watch this movie for like at least 2 years now, and I hadn't because I just hadn't wanted.
She often does things that I don't. I tell her, or she doesn't do the things I tell her to do, and then the things I tell her not to do for some reason.
She just does them. Yeah. So, but with this movie, it was just something where because he wouldn't tell me anything about it, and I like watching. I like experiencing things that my friends are excited about. Like when people get excited about something, I then want to go be excited too. Isaac was kind of just like, yeah, you should go watch Arrival. Yeah, you should just go watch Arrival. Like, you just do it. And I'm like, but I need more. You need to tell. And he can't because it's like A Beautiful Mind. You simply watch it. They can't spoil it for you because then you'll know going into it what's going on and blah.
Well, what's interesting about
Arrival... But anyway,
Arrival,
I recommend watching it.
What's interesting about Arrival is that the twist at the end for the film is actually revealed at the beginning for the short story. And so the reason why I would recommend watching the movie rather than hear us talk about it first and hear the spoiler is because as we talk about it, we are not as artful as Ted Chiang in explaining the twist at the end of this movie, but at the beginning of his short story. And so I would highly recommend at least reading the short story, if not watching this, I would say a beautiful masterpiece of a film by Denis Villeneuve. And so I'm going to do not really a spoiler summary, but I am going to talk about the summary of the plot. It's not actually a very complicated movie. The plot is very simple, just as Wikipedia kind of explained it. It's just the film follows a linguist enlisted by the United States Army to discover communication with extraterrestrial aliens who have arrived on Earth before tensions lead to war. And what's fascinating, I think, about this film is that the film is the outset of the film. I think the deceit of the film at the outset is this is an alien invasion movie, right? At least that's what the trailers kind of portray it as. But then the moment you hit the ground running with the beginning, you realize this is not at all about aliens invading. It's about this woman who has lost a child and the trauma that she has experienced, and then how she's dealing with certain things as these aliens arrive. And
that's one way. Yeah, that works.
And now I'm going to cut into the more spoilery part.
Spoilers!
Again, the plot is not that intricate. It's much more of a character study kind of movie, and it's focused on the singular character of Dr. Louise Banks, who is Amy Adams' character. And the spoiler is that she died. No, I'm kidding. All right, so the spoiler is that her child dies after the entire arrival sequence happens, or the alien invasion sequence. But that's not even really the twist. That is the twist at the end.
That's the result of the twist. That's the realization that the twist
right, that's the
brings
revelation of the twist. But the twist is not that. The twist is that she has been getting these flashes and comes to the realization of her future where her child dies and goes ahead with it.
See, I don't know how much you want to spoil because I'm like I want to say more because it's cooler than that.
And so I think it's one of the much more fascinating aspects in terms of the character drama, where I would encourage, of course, anyone to watch this movie multiple times because there's things that you pick up on as you're watching the movie the second, third, and fourth time, and then so on and so forth, that begins to kind of warp and play with your understanding of how the character is experiencing certain aspects of the story. And so
you're saying it so intellectually.
I am.
Is there a point to that?
I refuse to use the word beautiful.
No. Well, masterpiece works too,
kidding.
but it was okay. Basically, Louise Banks, because of talking with the aliens, can see the future. That is so cool, okay? And you were just like, yeah, no, she's watching the course of her daughter's death through the no, it's so cool, guys, okay, so
she clearly has just recently watched this movie.
Yes, no, like a few days ago, but yes, so time and space, us human beings individually experience time and space in a very linear way, like 99% of the time. It doesn't happen very often where you're able to fidget with that a little bit. So we experience time in a linear fashion, which means 1 second, next second. We have days, weeks, months, the years pass in a very specific way, and we experience them that way normally. And so it's something where the idea that, because our thoughts determine our lives. That's a basic principle. Is if you think about a whole bunch of things, that's where your life is headed. That's where you're going. That's the direction you're moving in. And it's a very linear thought process. And our language is like this. Like we used to, a lot of cultures write, or a lot more cultures used to write right to left, but most Western cultures write left to right. And it actually changes the way you think about things. It changes the way you perceive the world. And it's something where just little shifts like that. So for the alien language, where they draw in circular patterns, and they have different emphasis and little flares and little splashes and whatnot in their circles, and that's how they communicate. That's what their language is made up of, is these circles. And so it's something where they don't think in linear patterns. They don't experience time and space the same way that we do. And so it's something where, as you're exposed to this new thinking, as you're exposed to this non-linear way of thinking, she starts experiencing. And I need to watch it again, because I'm not sure of how anyone else is, because Jeremy Renner's character Ian, like I don't know how much he's experiencing this as well, because she's doing most of the talking, but both of them are working with it. So it's one of those, like, I feel like both of them are experiencing this, but we only have her main person, like, she's the main focus. And so it's something where her thought process, the way she experiences time and space from the very beginning of the movie, before she chronologically in a linear way meets the aliens, meets the heptapods, she's thinking in a non-linear fashion about her life. She's experiencing her life and her daughter's life in a non-linear fashion, and it's just mind-blowing. Anyway, that's my little, like, it's way cooler than Isaac's making it sound. He made it sound all pretty. Okay, I'm making it sound cool, and pardon the language, because it's badass. The writing is so amazing. Like, it transcends beautiful. Like, it is beautiful, and it's just, it's magnificent. And there's your extra little, like, drinking word, if that's what you're doing with this.
All right, so
okay, now I can
podcast
breathe.
is done. No, I'm kidding. So the reason why I do want to intellectualize this, because I think it's actually fascinating. So you said that we experience time in a linear fashion, and I don't think that's true.
Interesting.
And so the fascinating part about this movie is that it's science fiction, or it's considered science fiction. That's a genre of the film. And I would assume the short story. I actually haven't read the short story. I read the first.
It's on my to-do list, though.
First page and a half, and then I got really busy, and for some reason I dropped it. And so, shame on me. Well, no shame. I don't take any shame. But I'm going to go back and read the short story. So, but I don't know.
Good.
I wouldn't know how to categorize that short story, because short story categories and genres are a little bit different than, I think, longer fiction. Because there's a little bit more nuance and everything. But this film is more of the science fiction genre.
Oh, okay. Wait, so I have never watched this movie before in my life. So therefore, whose list is it on?
Oh, I was about to get to that, but I guess that was more of a brick in the window way of getting to it.
Woo.
It is
Smash.
on my list, and it is number 9 on my list. And so we've seen The Matrix, which was number 10, and then this is number 9 for those who are keeping track. All right, so this is a science fiction film, but what this does is bring a lot of, I would say, a lot of mysticism and spirituality into the science fiction genre in a way that is very palatable for people who are more interested in that technical, I guess, I don't want to say science-y because that's not a very good term, but science-y way of thinking, intellectual, I would say, way of thinking. And it kind of bridges that gap in a way that I believe, at least when I was watching this movie this time, I realized that this movie does what Interstellar tried to do, but far better. Because both movies are about love and the transcendence of love through physical obstacles. And I would say that obviously they have their different hints of it. And of course, I deeply admire Christopher Nolan and his work. All of his work has to do with time, which is really interesting.
Just a heads up, I haven't watched Interstellar, guys. So that's on my to-do list, too, because Isaac has told me to watch that one several times. But I really liked Arrival, though.
Let's have a moment of silence for Rosemary.
I don't know if I can be silent for that. You can be silent. He's being silent. He's mourning. It's not quite mourning.
She has interrupted the respectful moment of silence for her own good. I'm just kidding. All right, so, but I think this movie, for those who have seen Interstellar, this does what Interstellar was trying to do. Interstellar kind of took it in a very...
spacey.
No, it tried to do this similar thing, but I feel like this Arrival just did it far better. Just kind of co-linking those ideas.
Well, is this one simpler? Because to me, Arrival, they did a really good job of keeping it simple. And I really respect them for that. Did Interstellar keep it simple?
Let's not talk about Interstellar.
Okay, fine. I guess I'll have to answer my own question by going and watching it later.
You just gotta go watch it because it's a good movie. All right, so in that, I actually want to take the discussion of this film a little bit more on the characters and on the themes, and so that's why I did such a poor job doing the plot or summarizing the plot. So
very vague. I wouldn't say poor, just vague.
No, it was pretty poor. So the movie, in the movie, Amy Adams plays a character named Dr. Louise Banks, and for the entire movie, what you see of her character, and in terms of the present plot versus the Arrival plot versus the future plot, right? Because they're all kind of commingled together, and what you see is her entire character is extraordinarily lonely, and it's very fascinating because as a person who studies communication, and she admits this herself, of course.
You think you should be less isolated.
Well, yeah, for someone who studies how to communicate with other people, she's very isolated, right? Her home is isolated. It's on this gorgeous but very
beautiful.
Secluded lake, I think it is.
I think it's a lake.
Yeah, and despite, I think, working at a university, she would have to probably drive 40 miles to get to her.
She probably listens to podcasts.
All right.
Come on. All right, fine. So, yeah, she drives.
Very little reaction to
far.
that right now. But I was very surprised
He
by
just
that.
kind of like smiled and stared and was like, okay. That was his face right now.
And so her character is very lonely, very melancholy, and it's shown through all of her relationships. She has this kind of inability to relate to and talk to people, and part of it is that her character, she is very focused on her work. She's very focused on, and she's actually very proud of her. I would say she's not necessarily a savant, but she's basically at the top of her
food chain
field of study, right?
Food chain.
She's very focused on her work and very proud of her abilities, but her pride, and it actually shows at the beginning when the colonel comes in, and he's saying, that's why I'm here and not at Berkeley. Amy Adams, a very talented actress, she has this little smirk that she does, and you can tell, you better come to me, that kind of thing. And so
also, that's one of my favorite parts of the entire movie, is legitimately that little, like, the question and answer, because it was like asked Danvers, it was asked Danvers what the Sanskrit word for war and its translation, and it makes me so happy. It's also really just like brilliant, because when the colonel goes over and is like, all right, Danvers, so what's the Sanskrit word for war, and translate it for me. And so it was I don't remember what the exact word was, but it was a specific word, but he said that it meant an argument, and he was like, okay, what do you say? And she's like, a desire for cows. And it was just like, yes, it was so magnificent. Like, it was just, it was.
Why was it magnificent?
Because okay, I love language so much. Like, English is my favorite language, partially because there's so much going on. It's insanity, and it's beautiful. Anyway, and so with this, it's something where it makes sense. Like, okay, so way back when this word would have been created or needed in order to communicate what was going on, it makes sense historically that one of the first few versions of wars is a desire for cows, whether it's someone else's cows or your own cows or you're defending, or like, it makes sense, like, versus just like an argument. Okay, but then you have to explain an argument, so clearly, like, that's not the deeper meaning. So I love how well they handled this. I am a language enthusiast. I can't call myself a linguist because I don't have a degree yet. That is definitely something that I want, actually. However, it's something where them going in depth with this, and then when she later on, like, Ian talks to Louise, and he's like, I love the way you approach language because you approach it like a mathematician, and I'm like, yes, like, you can absolutely, like, linguistic intelligence is an intelligence, okay? Like, it's there are 7 intelligences, and linguistic intelligence is one of them, and I love it, and it makes me really, really happy, and it's nice that she's a genius, and it makes me, so that one piece was just, I loved it. It was good stuff.
So that part this time around, while I was watching it, was an indication of her character, in a sense, because what you see is that she is lonely for a reason. She is always in this competitive mode. And so she asks this question, what is the Sanskrit word for war, or what's the translation for it? And her immediate response is not a form of accommodation, but it's a form of competition, which makes it very fascinating to see at the level that she is at in terms of she has the skill and she has the ability to communicate well, but that doesn't mean that she is able to use it in a form that communicates well with somebody, right? And that character weakness is, I think, absolutely fascinating. Whenever I see something like that in a story, you get that sense. This character has this trait, or this, I guess in this tense you can call it a weakness in the character, but this character has this trait that prevents her from achieving a certain goal, right? But then she goes out of her way, or in the sense of this character goes out of her way to learn and become an expert at overcoming this specific obstacle, right? Of her character weakness. And at the end of the road, she has learned to be an expert and yet still not achieved what she wanted, which is that the ability to connect with other people.
Okay.
Right? And so I think that's, as a character base, that's absolutely fascinating.
Wait, so do you think that so with her character arc, do you think that she ever actually, because one of the things that she talks about is like one of the things that she sees in the future is like her husband has left her. There are several things that take place where she could have eased him into it. She could have done things a little more kindly or communicated better because of connecting better. So do you think that she actually has, but because just the way that you're phrasing that, it sounds like she doesn't actually have a character arc. It's more like a circle if she comes right back where she started.
So this is where the theme of time comes in with this film, because again, the deceit of time is that we must experience it linearly. But when you look at the film, she actually starts lonely, right? With her child dying, with her husband having left her. And then as you approach the end of the film, the ending shot of the film is her hugging her husband. And so if you approach time linearly, then certainly you can say that she started alone and ended alone. But if you understand the theme of the film, you understand it's actually that's not the growth, right? The growth is that she did start lonely, and certainly at the end she was alone, but she is not lonely anymore, right? She's not lonely, right? And that's the difference, right? You can start alone and end alone, but you don't have to be lonely towards the end, right? She has learned to connect with people, and her husband is really interesting.
He's amazing.
Like the characterization very much, but in this aspect, I think it's interesting that he is also, his very first introduction is,
he's a nerd.
No,
he's a genius.
He's competitive, right?
Oh.
And so he says, "You are wrong," right? And she's interested. Why am I wrong? Well, language is not the foundation of society; it's science, right? And as cliche as that sounds, in a sense, that is his take on it is that he comes from a foundation of science, but he also has this competitive nature, and that's what draws them together in this film. I find it absolutely fascinating that, I guess your word is beautiful, my word is fascinating. I find it really interesting that his character ends up leaving, and it's very in line with what he believes, because if you believe that the foundation of society is science, you would not want to bring a life into the world only for it to be taken away, right? That is a very unutilitarian way to do science, right? Or at least do moral science, right? And so in his mind, what she has done is immoral, right? But what is her perspective, right? Her perspective is, this is going to happen, right? And I want to enjoy and be a part of this experience no matter what.
Wait. So
right?
Do you think that he doesn't experience the same thing that she experiences with the heptapods? So you think that he can't? Because I'm not sure. I want to watch it again before I make sure.
I don't think, having watched the movie several times, I don't believe the movie makes an attempt to answer that question.
At all?
No. And so that doesn't mean yes or no.
Headcanons then.
Right. So it's not yes or no. And this is part of the reason why you asked me during the middle of the week, right? Why is this number 9 and not
higher on your list?
Not higher on my list. This is part of the reason why that this film is a very specific exploration of Dr. Louise Banks and the concepts of time and language. But we don't really. Every other character is basically one note. Every other character has only really one thing they're fighting for. There's not
because
much
that's how
complexity.
she sees them.
I would say that if you wanted to, as a filmmaker, you can certainly direct it a different way. But it's. I mean, it's a. I'm not trying to take away. Again, this is in my top 10.
Yeah.
This is.
You love this
9
movie.
out of.
You respect this movie.
Thousands and thousands of movies. This is not. This is not a bashing on the movie, but simply the reason is this movie explores one character, and there are other characters that I feel that if you give them a little bit more dimensions and facets to their personality, it would have been interesting to see, right?
Okay,
it wouldn't have necessarily made the film better because I wouldn't know. I'm not as good as Denis Villeneuve or Ted Chiang, but this is that. When the second time I remember distinctly, the second time I watched this movie, I was watching Jeremy Renner's character and I was deeply disappointed with his character.
Aww.
Not because he did a bad portrayal of it, but because that character is very one note, and it was necessary for the story. But I wish it was more interesting.
One way to have that happen is so one of the TV shows that I was not expecting to love this. Like, I was expecting to be okay with it. I was expecting for it to scare me and freak me out and whatnot, but I wasn't expecting to love this. And it's just the first season. I don't like the second season as much, but The Haunting of Hill House, because each one is a story. The Haunting of Hill House does what you're talking about, where what they do is they go through each character, and they go through and they show how they see everything, and that's the character focus. And then the next episode is a different character, and you see how, and the story progresses through this. So one way of doing this would be you have Louise Banks and her in-depth character study, and then to also have Jeremy Renner's version and have like the forward movement of what happens next in the story or what happens before, or like to see how he takes that and to see how that goes through, or to use that with like different characters. There aren't a whole bunch of characters that I could think of doing that with this movie, so like at most it'd be 3. But that would be, I really, really like the way the Hill House did that. And so just what you're talking about, I'm like, I like doing that with this kind of motion of the story.
When we do one of my other movies that are much higher on the list, I'll be taking that back because one of my other movies is a complete character study, and it's just, I love that movie. So, and it's higher on my list. So I will be biting my tongue, and we will see how hypocritical I am. So
we'll see.
One of the things that I noticed this time watching is that the character of Dr. Louise Banks, her full name is actually not introduced until she meets with Dr. Ian Donnelly. And so the immediate establishment of character is within the context of relationship, which I find fascinating.
It was amazing.
Right? Because you have this lonely character that you don't really know, but you feel terribly sorry for, because you see her going through this tragedy with her daughter, which of course the twist is that it's at the end of it. But in a sense, it doesn't matter, right? Because the very first line, I think, is what? Hold on.
I thought this was your beginning.
Right. I used to think that this was the beginning of your story, right? That was the literal first line, and of course she's talking about
Her daughter.
Or in the context, she's talking about her daughter, right? But when we broaden that out a little bit, she could be actually talking about you as the general audience.
Did she dedicate the book to Hannah before Hannah was even a person? Alive?
So
Born?
Right. Well,
sorry, I just realized
I don't
that
know
right now,
if
and I'm
that
curious.
happened, but before Hannah was older, right?
Yeah.
We definitely know that. We don't, because at least the time, and this is why to me it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? Because it could be before, it could be after, right? But the fact that she is experiencing what's happening at every moment, right? It does away with the concept of linear time, right? If I could experience, right? She has that question at the end where she asks, what's his name? Ian Donnelly. Yeah, there you go.
Ian.
So she asks him, right? Oh man, did I get this wrong? Right? Oh no, that's the revelation part. Sorry, I'm looking through my notes. And
oh, while he's looking through his notes, this movie is the epitome of show don't tell.
Yes.
So I
wouldn't say it's the epitome of it, but it's one of the epitomes of it.
It's one of the few movies that does it really well. And so that was just something that I wanted to point out.
That's actually something that Denis Villeneuve does really well. So from Blade Runner 2049 to Sicario to Arrival, and he's about to do Dune. I think this year it's going to be released. He's a film maker. Like he does visuals and just the cinematic process of film so well that I think, I mean, he is going to probably be one of my favorite directors, unless Dune really sucks, which I would be really sad about.
That would hurt.
It would really hurt. Like it's as bad as Avatar: The Last Airbender movie was.
No, it can't. No.
I would cry.
That's in like the bottom 5 movies ever done, and that's impressive.
Wait,
it doesn't
between
belong
that
there.
and The Room, which one do you hate more?
Oh, don't do that to me.
I'm just kidding.
The Room didn't pretend to be a good movie.
No, it did.
Only one person pretended that, and he directed it.
And wrote it, and produced it, and starred in it.
Only one person thinks it's a good movie.
That's
okay?
That's a pretty great rap sheet.
Avatar: The Last Airbender and like Percy Jackson, The Lightning Thief, like these movies actually got funded now, like within the last 15, 20 years. And like people liked like I respect Twilight and its movies and books more than I respect the way that they created Avatar: The Last Airbender the movie and Percy Jackson the movie. Like these are trash.
Right. So
it's not like The Room is in its own little bubble. It doesn't belong in the bottom 5 because the guy actually, like, it was one person and a bunch of poor people that were like, you know what, we're getting paid. Let's just do this.
Well, I mean, you have to admire the guy for his gumption and dedication. Yeah, like despite making a terrible. I mean, it's entertaining movie right now.
I feel like it's like okay, like you'll learn this with I'll leave that alone. With The Room, if it was in the bottom 5, it would be number 1, but it would be so far away from everything else that it's in its own category.
I disagree. I do agree that it's in its own category, but I don't agree that it's the worst. I actually think Avatar: The Last Airbender is worse. But if Villeneuve pulls
different way.
a M. Night Shyamalan, I will be very sad because he has such a good rap sheet. You have to understand, M. Night Shyamalan before The Last Airbender was actually
he was respected.
A very well respected director.
Really?
He did The Sixth Sense, and then he did Unbreakable. And then I think he did The Village. I think it was The Village.
These are all movies that I've seen previews for and was like, I don't want to watch those. They look dumb.
Well, they're either cult classics movies or very, very well received, right? In terms of critics. And so, hope for the best.
I heard his name a lot in advance, but I didn't hear a lot of good things. It was just like you said, like cult. Like a lot of people were like, M. Night Shyamalan, and it's like, all right, fine.
Right. So before he did Last Airbender, he was actually one of these directors that people were going, okay, he's gonna be one. He's gonna
do well.
Yeah, he's gonna do. But unfortunately,
and then you watch the opening credits and you realize just how far he fell.
Well, we'll see. All right, so. I think there is some redemption value to be found. No, actually,
in Avatar: The Last
no, I actually don't. I feel very, very bad for everybody.
You watch it so you understand what not to do.
When I watched it, I just felt really bad for everybody. Even
did you finish the movie?
No,
that's what I thought.
I didn't finish.
I'm pretty sure you didn't.
I got to the part where, what were they doing? The kid was not even going to call him because he's not even called Aang.
No.
He's called Ong. So I got to the part where they're defending the place.
That's a movie I will never recommend you watch.
Oh.
Ever. Even
I mean,
for
I've
funny.
already watched it.
I know.
So
No, to anyone else. Like, I would never recommend that someone watch that. Like, maybe, not even as a drinking game.
So
That's just
For
trash.
everyone who hasn't seen the cartoon,
Don't. Oh no, sorry, not. Yeah.
please go watch this one and then go watch the cartoon.
No.
I'm just kidding. Not
Please
really.
don't.
I actually really would
Please
want to
don't,
see
no.
someone go
Be
through that.
attached to the movie.
They watch the movie and look at it, and I don't think
They're
anyone
like,
thinks
it
it's
could be
good.
so much more amazing. Like
Right.
there's so much potential here, and then you watch the
And
TV
then-
show and you're
right,
like,
and they
okay.
fulfilled that potential.
I don't want anyone to experience that, but it would be very amusing. If anyone has had that experience, let us know.
Yeah, let us know in the comments below or in our reviews. You know, now that we've totally derailed from Arrival.
Yeah.
Anyways, so she says this thing at the end to Donnelly. Amy Adams does.
Mm-hmm.
She says, "If you could see your whole life from start to finish, would you change anything?" Right? And
you have to say his reply too.
well, his reply is a little bit more like maybe, right?
No,
But
it's the I'd
it's
say
more
what
about
I feel
how
a
he
little
feels,
bit more.
right? So it's more about how he feels.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not. Well, okay. I'm just gonna concentrate on.
All right, fine, Louise
on
Banks.
what she's saying.
If you could do it over.
If you could see your whole life from start to finish, would you change anything? And I think the route that she takes, right, is really very meaningful, because when you understand that it's not just the start of the movie that she begins to see the child, right? But she actually has the flash forwards do technically start the moment that she sees the language for the first time. That does happen, right? But when we take a look at the view of the film, where the actual film starts with that tragic scene, right? That tragedy, I want to say it's like the timeline folded on itself.
By the way, it hits you like a Pixar film. In case you
Right,
didn't
like Up.
understand that before this.
Up. So
It hits you almost as hard as Up. Up was still a little bit sweeter. Because
Up
you get the whole, yeah.
was two tragedies, right? They couldn't have a baby tragedy, and then the
She
wife
dies,
right?
Spoilers
and so two
if
tragedies.
you haven't seen Up.
I mean, sorry.
It still hurts though. Even if you haven't, and we tell you this now, you're gonna
Right.
watch
I mean,
it, and
the
then
first
you're
time
gonna
I watched
cry.
Up, I was a kid, I guess. I think, and I wasn't a kid, but I was kind of a
You were a
teenager.
teenager.
I wasn't really kind of paying attention to it much.
I didn't watch it till several years
And
after it came out. So
I watched it and I was like, oh, that was a really sad thing.
no, I cried. I was upset.
But now that I've experienced life, it's much sadder, I think.
Interesting.
And so it's either way. What was I saying? So I think in Arrival, you can see the timeline kind of fold on itself, right?
Okay.
And she experiences these flash forwards and these I don't know I don't know what you call them, premonitions. There you go, premonitions of what's going to happen. But she experiences them. It seems like the consequence of those experiences happen in her entire life, and she has all these moments of all this loneliness because she doesn't understand how to deal with connection, right, or the lack thereof, right. And so you pull it through to the end of the film, which is these moments where she is now on Torrent experiencing all of that connection at that singular moment in time. And you can imagine, I would imagine, that she, being someone who now thinks non-linearly, then is able to go through the experiences of her life and kind of, I don't want to say reinforce, but she, at the beginning of the movie, she says she's fine. Right?
She
fine.
says that a lot throughout,
Right.
like, most of the movies. Like, I'm fine, and we're all like, no, you're not.
Well,
no, you're not.
That's I think that's an interesting look at it, right? Because maybe she is.
Speaking of fine, this is one of the few movies where I actually really like Amy Adams in most of her stuff that I've seen, because most of what I've watched are like the chick flicks, which she's delightful. It's just limited and so I'm not usually super fond of Amy Adams, and so this movie, especially when I was like, all right, she's in this, all right, we'll figure it. That was honestly probably part of the reason why I didn't watch the movie for so long, is because I didn't know how well she was gonna do. And then this movie, like, I kind of fell a little bit in love with Amy Adams. Like, she's she did a really good job with this role. So she is fine. She's just not healthy fine. So anyway, her character Louise Banks is not Dr. Louise Banks.
So I think I think when you play with the concept of time in this way, much like actually a lot of Nolan films do, it becomes kind of an interesting thought experiment, because when you watch the movie back, you think, okay, if time is not linear, then what is time, or what does experience mean if time is not linear? Because we typically, again, think of time as being linear. We go from age 0 to Z, and Z being you know, no one knows when they're going to not experience life anymore.
I got it. But I flinched for a second, but I was like, all right, cool.
And so you go from
I feel
whatever
like I would have
age.
used X, but yeah.
Sure. X.
But it was like X marks the spot. That's all. That was just in my head. So Z works because the end of the American English alphabet.
Or is it? All right. So we typically think about it our lives that way, and we think experiences upon experiences upon experiences upon experiences. And I think a lot of times I think this film makes a really good argument for making sure that you're in the moment in whatever present that you are or circumstance that you're in. The idea that time is not linear, and we know that time is technically not really linear.
Nope.
In terms of physics, it's just
It's a
it
big
can
wibbly-wobbly,
curve, right?
timey-wimey
And so
ball.
then what is the thing that collapses that
ball.
time together? Well, in this story, it is her experience and her connection to people, right? And so at the end...
Wait. Rephrase that? Like her connection to people collapsed time?
Yeah. Right? It's not this kind of... Every moment of her flash forwards, right, is a connection point. It's a moment where she's connecting with somebody.
Okay.
Right? Whether it's her child, whether it's her husband.
So the important moments that she is flashing forward to, because like when she talks to General Shang, like that is a relationship.
Yeah, that was a relationship, right?
Okay.
Every single
cool.
moment. So the connection point becomes her way of being able to.
Interesting.
Right. The
I'm
only
gonna
one
have to
that
sit with that,
wasn't.
that's good stuff to.
The only one that wasn't technically was when she was opening up the book to see Hannah in the book that she wrote. But it still was
about relationship,
because it was about the relationship that she had with her child, right? For Hannah, the book was written for Hannah, right? And so, it's an interesting concept to think about how this, if time isn't linear, what causes it to collapse, right? And in human experience and human consciousness, we often think back on times, right? And we kind of either romanticize or we traumatize those moments when we think back on them. What if, right, your human kind of ability to conceive of certain things, right, the ability to consciously observe, is making those things happen, right? And then on the other side,
well, they
what
have
does
that
it
in
look
physics.
like in the future?
That's a physics principle.
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about in terms of like we remember things, right?
Well, one of the things is like, for example, sadly, it is a foundation of our society at the moment, but trauma takes place. Most people experience some form of trauma throughout the course of their life, especially when they're young. The nature of the trauma can be different, but trauma is usually still experienced by pretty much everyone, especially in American society, Western society. And it's something where trauma happens through often. I don't know of a single instance where it's no, because there's okay. So with trauma, the way that my brain is processing things right now is like trauma has to do with relationship and broken relationships. And so the idea of healing from those traumas is you also have to heal the relationship or heal the relationship with yourself that was wounded by the relationship with someone else. And I'm processing this right now because it's interesting that our experience of time is like that makes sense to me. It feels right. There's a sense of rightness.
Well, let's bring it into a little bit more of a
that.
concrete reality or a tangible reality. When we think of a lot of times when people go into counseling, they go to counseling because the traumatic experiences of their past are affecting their present, right? And so what a counselor does very steadily through multiple sessions is to have their client revisit those traumas, right? And the revisitation of those traumas, right, can bring up two things, right? You can bring up, and I'm just going to say this broadly because I'm not going to do a therapeutic session here, but they can bring up two things. It can bring more trauma into the situation as you remember what happened to you, or it can bring healing, right? And the determination of that is the foundation that you have in that presence of remembering how you're going to approach that trauma. And so, an example would be if a child is abused by an authority figure in their past, what often has to happen is that the child has to forgive that person, right? And when you bring the child, or not that they're not a child anymore, probably.
Yeah.
But when you bring that person to the moment, back to the moment of that trauma in the memory.
A lot of people that do this, they call it inner child work because there's Anyway, yeah, we don't need to go super into that because
we don't
it's
need to be technical,
beautiful
right?
and deep thing.
And so, I mean, people can look this up and everything like that. But you revisit that moment, and the forgiveness has to be there, right? In order for the person then to be able to start healing and move on. And so the moment of
release yourself from the attachment that you have made to that situation. And so forgiveness is part of that release of attachment.
I would disagree with that. I would say it's redoing the attachment, right? The attachment of it was trauma and negative, but what forgiveness does is reprogram that attachment to become a positive force, right? So that you can heal.
I feel like you have to discreate the old attachment, though, and then you have to. So I guess it's both. You have to create.
We might be using the same word or different words to mean the same thing, right?
It's possible,
right? And so, but at the end result of it, right, would be
to create a new healthy attachment to going forward.
Well, you're right, to create new healthy relationships, right? And so that trauma point, right, is a point in time, but the consciousness of how we think is revisiting that and you would say. I would say reinterpreting that into something that becomes part of your empowerment process.
I understand what you're going for, and I don't agree with that.
So, sure.
That's fine.
And so, and when I say reinterpreting, I'm not saying that the event didn't happen, but that the power that we have as people can change that circumstance. And so, in that is a very tangible way of thinking about it, right? But
it's a more tangible way.
What if we can do that for the future, right? What if we can take moments out of the future, right, knowing that that's going to happen, and reinterpret those as, because technically Dr. Banks can go through her life, have her child, and just be super sad that the child is going to die, right? And some people live like that. Some people go through their life and maybe they have a kid and they kind of, in not being able to understand the connection points of the moments that they're with their kids or with their families or with their husband or wives or whatever, they go through life and they're constantly visiting upon the other person the traumas of their past, right? Or just a negative, maybe lonely kind of, I would say, spirit in a sense, right? But that might be how Donnelly processed it and then walked away from the family, right? But for her, knowing that this is going to happen, even knowing that this is going to happen, she chooses, I think, and I have a quote here somewhere, and I have to find it again because of... Okay, so despite knowing the journey and where it leads, I embrace it and welcome every moment of it. Right?
Is that her quote?
Yeah, that's her quote.
Yeah.
That's not Donnelly's quote.
I was like, I'm pretty sure.
that would definitely not be Donnelly's quote.
That's not his.
So despite knowing the journey and where it leads, I embrace it and welcome every moment of it. Right? And so understanding the trauma that she's about to go, understanding the trauma that she's about to go through, yet she experiences it. She willingly experiences it and welcomes it and lives in the present moment despite knowing it, right? She knows her husband is going to leave her at the end there, right? And she says, I've missed this hug from you, right?
Yeah,
Which means that she's actually experienced the after effect already, right? And so she's going through all this stuff. And I think that's why we're shown that loneliness in the beginning of the film. She might not consciously know it.
She doesn't have the acceptance yet.
Right.
She has all the emotion of all these things that haven't happened yet. Well, and
And at the end point, it becomes I miss, not, you know what I mean? It's I miss it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's still that experience and that connection point.
Okay.
Right?
So once again, I love this movie. I'm so impressed with this movie.
It's
This is the only movie, like, even though we share a couple movies on our top 10, like, this is the
Maybe
only,
this movie should go on your top 10.
This is the only movie that has actually made me, like, reconsider his list and my list, and having, like, I really, and I'll get more to, like, why I like it later, like, because it helps me with, like, what I'm working on as well. And so with the relation, because it's just, okay, in my opinion, life is about relationships.
Sure.
Absolutely, 100%. It's about your relationships. And so
we haven't even gotten to the language part.
Oh, no, we haven't. Well, because, again, the relationship part is more important, in my opinion. So, like, as much as I love language, as much as I love that she's a linguist and she's such a nerd and it's so cool, and oh my gosh, it's so cool. It's also something where accepting, because, okay, so again, Isaac and I are Christian, so part of this is from a Christian perspective. One of the things that we are called to do is every single day, for every single thing in our lives, we're supposed to thank God. Okay? There is an attitude of gratitude, and it's something where that is really important with relation. It probably is. Many people probably have this somewhere. I don't, but it's a thing. It's a fun little rhymey thing.
Sounds like there's another tude that should go on at the end there. Like something other.
Like what
tude.
though?
I don't know.
I don't know anything else that ends with tude except etude. An etude about the attitude for gratitude. Like,
oh
that's
yeah,
not...
that's pretty good. Rosemary's starting to rap, guys. I'm not really kidding. If you want to start rapping, go for it.
I can do poetry and I can write
Your
that out.
etude about attitudes
hard.
of gratitude.
Like if you want 5 minutes of silence, I will write something and then read it. But like you will have the 5 minutes of silence first.
I can talk for 5 minutes.
No, not yet. Maybe
right.
maybe
if
later.
If you guys
maybe
want
later we'll
Rosemary
do that.
to rap on the podcast, please let us know.
If someone actually, if 5 people actually write in on the comments.
If one person.
No, 5. I'm not doing this for less than 5. 5 people need to say this.
Hey, one person, just make 5 accounts.
5 comments. I will find a way to rap at some point during one of the podcasts. But again, relationship. See, I need relationship from the people listening in order for me to sacrifice.
Tell
my
her
dignity.
how much you love her in the comments.
Aww.
And then she will rap.
That will make me smile. Anyway, sorry.
And then find some synonyms, or not synonyms, the things that rhyme with tude.
Oh, you specifically? So you want etude? You want the etude attitude for gratitude as like a thing,
kidding.
and that's the rap. You want about that?
I'm just trolling right now. I'm not.
Okay.
But if you really want to.
Back to the movie.
Tude.
Okay, so, regrets. In my opinion, regrets are useless. You should learn from your mistakes, but you shouldn't regret them because they are helping you grow. They're helping you move forward. So as you move forward in your life, whether you know the future in advance or not, it's something where there's an appreciation. If you don't have that appreciation, you're going to be depressed. You're going to be hurt. You're going to be continuously wounded by the things that are happening to you because you're not able to appreciate the beauty and have awe in the moment of that relationship with other people. And so even if other people hurt you, even if other people praise you, even if other people are working with you and connecting with you and you have this synergistic relationship with yourself and others and with God, it's something where you need to be able to appreciate. You need to be able to be thankful, be grateful, have this just energy, this attitude for life. And she, by the end of the movie, has that. She has that appreciation that she didn't have in the beginning. In the beginning, life was happening to her. The future was happening to her. Like it was something where like these moments kept hitting her and hitting her and hitting her, and she wasn't able to appreciate it. She was just depressed and lonely and sad. And like Isaac pointed out, at the end of the movie, she's not alone. So even though she's not lonely, so even though she knows that she started alone and she will probably end alone. At the time, the way that the story ends, like she's still the relationship.
That's a pretty big character arc if you think about it.
That is my opinion of her character arc, is that she, instead of like life happens to me, it's letting life happen and appreciating the relationships and the connections.
There's a line, I think, in Harry Potter where Dumbledore is talking to Harry at the end of the 7th book, I believe.
In the train station of death?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And they're talking, and I think I don't remember it, but it's
Deathly Hallows is my favorite book, so.
Oh. Okay.
Even with the mistakes and stuff in it.
Well, you mean the actual
the ending,
the ending and the epilogue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't read it.
I think that's the best way to do that.
Yeah.
I think.
Just don't read the last chapter.
Oh man! All right, we can't get on a Harry Potter tangent. Oh man!
But no, Dumbledore says to Harry Potter.
Right. So
in the train station of death.
Harry's dead.
Yes.
Right. Oh, spoilers. If you haven't watched Harry Potter yet.
Harry Potter dies, everyone. He dies.
Oh man. So
he's never coming back.
So he's dead, and he talks to Dumbledore at this train station.
Who is also dead.
Oh man. Well, obviously, right? But they're talking at this train station, and Dumbledore says something along the lines of like, oh no. So Harry asks him the question, wait, has this all been in my mind? Right?
Oh.
Right. And then Dumbledore's like, of course, right? And then he goes, so it's not real, right? And then Dumbledore says, why should that make them any less important? Right. Why should it make it any less real, I think. Yeah. Something like that. Look it up. I don't remember. Know. And so again, we're kind of, and I think in a sense, a lot of my movies that I like have this idea of what is reality, right? And what. And so it's of course it's happening inside your. So he asks like, is this all happening in my head or is this real? Yeah. And he's like, of course it's happening inside your head, Harry. But why on earth should that mean it's not real? Right. And I was like, ooh, yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. It's really good because it's the understanding that consciousness is in a sense the ultimate reality, right? Yes. What we experience in consciousness we each experience our own reality, which creates our own reality. It's the whole our thoughts define our lives. Right. And so, but I would take it more than that, or deeper than that, right? In the sense that our thoughts aren't the only part of us. It's not like we don't experience, we're sitting in front of a table or whatever. Yeah. This table is real, but our experience of the table is very different, right? And that difference in reality is just as legitimate, right? My experience of that reality is different, or is just as legitimate as yours, although sometimes. Sometimes Isaac disagrees. Sometimes I disagree. Sometimes I wonder if Rosemary is a figment of my imagination. No, I'm just kidding. Interesting. See, that is an actual fear of mine. Like watching A Beautiful Mind, like I watched it with the wrong everyone's fear, people. I think. After watching Beautiful Mind, it's like, are you real? Well, no, because I had that fear beforehand, though. I had that fear beforehand, and it was something where I watched it with the wrong people, and they were like making fun of me afterwards, and like, yeah, we're figments of your imagination. I was like, guys, we just watched this. Don't do this to me, please. I would have been one of those people. Oh, you would have. You absolutely would have. And I would never watch that movie. Actually, no. I feel like I would watch the movie with you, and then we'd either have to talk about something else, or I'd leave. You start doing that. I actually threatened them. I was like, you keep talking like this and I'm going to leave. I think what I would do would be more subtle. Would be I would disappear myself sometimes. So like we would be like we would be watching a movie or whatever. You would just be here during the podcast and all of a sudden just go to your car? No. I would just like let's say we're watching a movie with friends or whatever, and we've all planned this against you, and so and so we'd be like watching and talking and all this kind of stuff, and then I would like leave a sandal on the floor and then just like walk away, but like you're so invested in the movie, right? And then suddenly you turn around and you're not there, but then there's a shoe. There's a shoe. Why is there a shoe, right? And then we would do this constantly until you think like you're crazy because you've been walking around with the same shoe, and it's just like, is Isaac a figment of my imagination? I'm so sorry to the audience. However, if you want to turn off, you might want to right now. Fuck you. No. I'll erase that. If he wants to bleep it out, he can. But so no. That would be really fun to do. And then we would give you, being a good friend, at the end of the whole joke, we would give you a good present. No. I'll take you out there too. I'm just kidding.
Oh no. Anyway.
So despite knowing the journey and where it leads, I
still
embrace it and I welcome every moment of it, right? And so she has this kind of character growth, right? But it's not the character growth that we typically see in a lot of films and even a lot of stories. She in the time chronology, she starts alone and she ends alone, right? But the difference is at the end, she's not lonely, right? And that's huge, right?
Yeah.
The maturity of understanding and not being lonely, despite maybe being isolated, right? That's called someone who's mature. That's someone who's grown, right? And it's just I think I will use the term now. It's a beautiful way of doing the story.
So with this, okay, so I have been holding back because I want to talk. So this movie is actually going to be one of my favorites. I don't know if it'll be in the top 10 or not, but it is going to be in one of my favorites simply because of the fact that
it's better than Palm Springs.
Oh yeah, no. Well, Palm Springs was already For me, after discussing and analyzing and watching it several times, after my depression was over, I was like, oh, Palm Springs does not deserve to be there. Okay, so Happy Death Day was replacing Palm Springs. Okay, as a little time loop movie, which is actually really good, and you would enjoy that movie. You might not like it, you might not think it deserves to be in my top 10, but you would you would appreciate it more, significantly more. I feel like that's a really low standard, but like you would appreciate it more. Anyway, with Arrival, it's something where it actually helped me figure out a couple more things about two of the stories that I am working on. So before everything went down last year, and I think actually the year before that, there were several things that happened, and I had the idea for an apocalypse story. Because I feel like every writer has an apocalypse story. Like you have a story about the end of the world or a post-apocalyptic world, and so this post-apocalyptic world is having a bunch of apocalypses all like in a repeated sequence. Anyway, the point is the way that they do the experience in the movie of like the aliens coming in and several things, like it helped with that one. The one that I was more impacted by was I have a story idea that I've had for a while, and I actually wrote the beginning and I wrote the end, but I wasn't sure how to do the middle because I had this kind of idea and I'm like, I'm not a good enough writer yet. I had that sense like as I was working on it, I'm like, I'm not a good enough writer for this yet. Like at some point I will be, but right now, because I started this story when I was like 15, 16, something in there, and it was something where I'm like, I'm not a good enough writer for this yet. And so with this movie, it helped because with the way that the book goes is the ending takes place first. So you have this character that, and again, I like making people fall in love very quickly with my characters. And so it's something where you fall in love with this woman who is essentially lying over the
Are we talking about your story or talking about Arrival?
Okay. No. So my story is you have this woman who is walking away from the bodies of two men that she's loved. Okay? And
she killed them.
No, she killed one of them. And so it's something where you start with her mourning these two men.
The other one killed the other one, right?
Yes. Yes. Oh, come on. My love stories are good. They're also like
This is a good love story so far. This is the most like horrible love story.
Okay, the point is it starts with the end, and then the next chapter is the beginning of the story.
Right, okay.
And so it's something where it goes back and forth chapter to chapter of going backwards, and so you end in the middle. And I love this idea, and I have these characters, and I've fallen in love with these characters, and I know kind of where the journey goes, but I wasn't able to write it well because I didn't know how to present it properly. And so it's something where with this movie, the way that they go backward and forward, and then they end in the middle. They end at a beginning. They end at a middle.
They started at Z and A.
Yeah.
And then they ended up with O. Right.
Exactly. And so I love that. And so it really helped me. Like, I'm going to watch this movie again for the specific purpose of trying to figure out how I can apply this to my own writing. And then I need to figure out the influences, like reading the short story, like paying attention to this director and
the short
how
story,
they
as
are
far
able
as
to
I
do
remember,
this.
is not really like this.
Probably not, but it influenced this. It inspired this. So I want to see what inspired this. Because again, relationship is important. This movie isn't a standalone movie. This movie is created in, like, one of the things that I realized, like, the entire time of watching this is not only is this heavily influenced by Jurassic Park, it's also heavily influenced by 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like every time that they show the dome thing, it's like the little pillar in 2001 Space. Like these movies heavily influence this movie.
It uses the film language.
Yeah. And so something where like we're more made up of our relationships to things and our relationships to other people. And so those relationships help dictate this movie.
You know what movie you should watch if you're really wanting to see all that?
Yes.
You should watch Interstellar. But you should also watch Memento.
I have that on my to-do list. I actually want to watch Memento more than I want to watch Interstellar.
Yes.
Because
Memento
has
Memento
Guy
first.
Pearce and the chick from Matrix.
Yes.
Yeah.
Carrie Ann Moss.
Yeah, and so I really do want to watch that movie. It's sitting in my one of those those hundreds of open tabs that I have on both of.
I would suggest, since you're on this hype, watch Memento next.
Okay, I will do my
let's
best
say
to
you
watch
want
it
to
over
do
the next week,
Arrival or Memento or whatever.
I'll watch Memento again and then I'll watch Arrival.
Again.
Or watch Memento and then watch Arrival again.
Have we just skipped time? What happened here?
Yeah.
Cool. That's
so it's something where it really helped with what I'm working on, especially because I've been stuck on that story for a few years now. Like I haven't been able to touch it because I'm like I don't have something tangible that I can look at and see someone else doing it well. Like there are other people who've attempted and it sucked, and that's why I stopped. I'm like, no, I'm not going to disrespect my story. I like this. I know I can do it well, just not right now. And so
study the greats. And what you really like, not The Room. Not Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Actually, Avatar: The Last Airbender, the TV show, they did do a really good job.
Oh, right. The movie was just called The Last Airbender. Right. I remember that now.
Yeah.
The cartoon is called Avatar: The Last Airbender, and then the movie is called just The Last Airbender.
Yep. And so Avatar, the TV show, is very, very, very well done, and they do a really good job. Especially, in my opinion, it is one of, if not the best animated series that I've ever watched.
For me, it used to be one of the best.
What changed that?
Rewatches. As I rewatch it.
To be fair, I haven't rewatched it very much, so that makes sense.
Well, my probably first 5 rewatches were fine.
Okay.
But as I rewatched it more and more, I began to see kind of the limitations and the weaknesses of the script.
Interesting.
So I think, well, I'll say this: Avatar: The Last Airbender is extremely good.
Very.
There's no question that it's should be very high.
If you have the time and you like good entertainment and you want good entertainment, this is absolutely.
It's not just entertaining though. There's lots of themes, lots of characterizations, and lots of a lot of depth in that 3-season little cartoon. It's
good entertainment.
So it's really, really good. However, I think it could have been better had the maturity of what they knew in season 3 and Legend of Korra were put on season 1.
I didn't watch Legend of Korra.
Don't watch Legend of Korra.
I didn't want to.
Don't watch Legend of Korra.
See, I have good taste.
Legend of Korra, the first season was really good, except for the very, very, very end. But just in terms of the maturity of how they wrote the script in season 1 for Legend of Korra, the way that the characters kind of grew and interacted with each other and everything, if they took that and kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say remade, but just kind of redid it. Carried it into Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think it would have made it better. But as it stands in itself, I think Avatar: The Last Airbender is very, very excellent.
Really good. Yeah. It's really good, guys. Anyway, but so with this affecting what we're working on and whatnot, I was just impressed because Big Short kind of affects it in a way of like, okay, here's how you do a documentary. In my opinion,
it's not really a documentary.
Okay, in my opinion,
it's a very fictionalized documentary.
Yes, because most people are bored by documentaries. You have documentaries.
Really?
Okay, it depends on the documentary. Okay, it really does. Okay, I'm gonna take it back. I am bored by documentaries.
Oh.
Okay, because if I want to go do research, I can go do research.
May the Lord forgive you for your sins.
Honestly, yeah, no, please, yeah, no, God, I'd appreciate that. It's also something where, for me, again, characters are important. Usually with documentaries,
oh right, okay, that's what you mean.
Follow characters. They don't follow people.
Well, modern day documentaries,
they've gotten better
at that
because they've
gotten
have to
worse
entertain
at the
people.
history for some
exactly.
reason. Yeah, it's very weird.
it's very frustrating. And so it's something where like Big Short does a really good job of, yes, it's fictionalized, and they really do a good job of portraying what happened as far as the time. And of course, all documentaries are going to have a slant.
Right.
All of them. That's how that works. We're human. We're going to force our perspective or accidentally imbue our perspective into the things
we're always
we work
going to be biased.
Yeah, we're always biased. And so it's something where...
Except Rosemary, right? Rosemary is the perfect unbiased person.
Oh, I wish. No, I don't. No, I don't, because no one would listen to me. Because
right.
it's something I was biased. I would just know.
You'd just be mute.
I would just know. Anyway, point is, Big
because
Short.
As soon as you open your mouth,
I like
you have a
see, but I don't want to write documentaries. So it's something where Big Short is beautiful and help with that, and then Tropic Thunder is just good for comedic timing. It's useful, but like there are other movies that do that too. And so it's something where like Arrival, genuinely, like I want to go back and watch Arrival for the purpose of improving my own skills.
Right.
None of the honestly like. Maybe Dark Knight a little bit has me doing that, but of the movies that we've talked about from both of our lists so far, like my movies, I choose them because they help me and encourage me and inspire me to continue working on my writing.
Right. One of the things that like I put on my list of it has to have this in the top 10 was it takes me a while to
notice the director's hand.
Right. Notice the director's hand. And Arrival is interesting because on the second time I watched, I didn't notice the director's hand, but I could kind of see the surfaces of it. But what's really interesting is that I want, like this time I have to take notes because this is my movie and I want to explain it and all this kind of stuff. But I didn't want to. I just wanted to sit there
and enjoy it.
And I just wanted to experience the movie.
For me, I love note taking. I love notes. Okay. They are messy and organized and chaotic and beautiful, but so it's something where
we gotta find a new word there.
I'm really annoyed now because I'm like that was the natural word, and then it was just.
But basically, for those who don't know, basically is also a word that Rosemary uses a lot.
You really could do a drinking game. It's just get me excited about something and let me go
it would
for
just
like 30 minutes.
Basically, this beautiful thing was basically like this really beautiful thing.
And apparently, supposedly, like maybe. Anyway,
everyone has those. Don't worry.
I know, but I get made fun of for them.
All right.
I don't know anyone else who gets made fun of for like the specific random words that I use. That
I used to be
random.
made fun of for the word actually.
Really?
Yeah.
I've been made fun of for that.
Yeah.
I used to, especially because I used to say it. I meant it as a compliment. And
oh,
that's
right.
Not
yeah, we did make fun of you for that.
Made fun of
because all of your compliments just sounded like backhand compliments.
You're actually good at that, which I meant is like, wow, I'm surprised. Like,
right.
I don't expect people to be good at things, and that's not an insult. It's just like I don't know you,
right.
so I don't have an expectation.
She does not expect you to be good at things, guys.
Oh,
that's just a joke.
I know this. Anyway, but point is, nope, I forgot the point.
Arrival is such a good movie that you would go back and look at it and watch it to pick up.
Yeah, for the purpose of writing. And a lot of Isaac's movies don't really do that for me. Oh, no. Okay, with the note-taking. Note-taking. Got it. Notes. Okay. With the... He made a funny face at the last sentence I said. But with the note-taking, it's something where with this movie...
looking at my list, I think most of my movies...
Well, for you
said have inspired you.
They have helped, but, like, I'm not going to go rewatch them for help. Like, I will rewatch them because they're fun and enjoyable and I like them. I'm not going to rewatch them for the purpose of, like, taking notes and, like, actually paying attention. No. Some of the ones that we haven't gotten to yet, especially, like, some of the ones higher up on the list, yes, I do.
Right.
Yeah, but from, like, Dark Knight down, this is the only movie that really, like, even, like, The Matrix kind of helps with perspective. Big Short helps with, like, documentaries and just enjoying people and like having a better understanding of what happened in 2008. Tropic Thunder is hilarious and it's delightful and it's really well written and really well put together. And
well, I think unless you're writing writing a script or writing a story that's like these, it's difficult to go to them and then
and so Arrival. Okay, the better way to phrase this is Arrival is a movie that I would write. The other movies that you have in there,
guys, she's so good that she can write for Denis Villeneuve.
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe. Guys, petition him. So be like, there's a girl named Rosemary that wants to write for you.
I would enjoy that experience. He might not enjoy that experience, but I would enjoy that experience.
Knowing what I know about Denis Villeneuve, like his directorial style, I think he would.
Yeah?
I think, because he's very...
That's one of the nicest things Isaac has ever said to me.
Well,
he likes and respects this director and thinks that this guy would enjoy working with me.
If you hone
that
your
is
craft,
one of the best things.
I would say that.
That's one of the best. Well, but I am.
Right.
And
So
that's one of the nicest things.
as you hone your craft, it's more because of him. The way that he works with writers is very, very interesting. Like it's because a lot of like scripts that Christopher Nolan does, it's very much with his brother Jonathan Nolan, and they just kind of write the scripts together. But I think the way that Villeneuve does it is I would go on YouTube and look up interviews with him. Yeah, because it's very interesting. I really like his style.
Have to check it out. Anyway, but with the notes, one of the things that I like the second the movie started and I heard that violin and I was like, you know what? No, I'm just gonna enjoy this movie.
Cello, right? Has to be a cello. Do I not know violins and cellos?
I know violins and cellos, and it was much higher pitched.
Just because it's high pitched doesn't mean that it's not a cello.
That would be really tragic. No, because cellos they resonate differently.
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna be really upset if it's a cello.
We'll look it up.
Because there were 2 points where I was paying attention to it rather than appreciating it, and so the second time was when I was like, okay, this is a violin. So it's possible the first time was a cello, but I'm pretty sure it was a violin because I could have sworn it was the same instrument. I usually have a good ear.
If it's a cello, you buy me lunch. If it's a violin, I'm not buying lunch.
Why?
I'm just kidding. I'll buy you lunch.
Oh, okay.
What lunch do you want?
There's a croissant place down the street that's really good.
Okay, that's cheap. Good. All right.
Oh, what kind of lunch do you want?
Oh.
Oh, okay. I see how this is.
If you're paying for it. All right.
Wait, now I really want to know, though.
What? I have no idea.
If it's a violin or a cello.
Oh, right. Well, we'll find out. We'll have to find out after the... All right. Because you were explaining your story.
We will reveal it in the next one, I guess. Rather than looking it up now.
We still have to go to the next one. All right, so...
Wait, so how does it... Oh, wait, no. So basically, I made the point of appreciating this movie rather than being super analytical about it. And because I still critique movies when I watch them. It's just more of a subconscious, like slightly conscious thing. Right. It's not something I do. I don't let it take away from my enjoyment of the film.
Right.
And so it's something where...
This film sucks you so much into it.
I let it suck me in.
Right. You want to let it suck you in.
That's such an interesting. Like I don't know how comfortable I am with that phrasing, but yes, and so it's something where they did a really good job with that, and involving you, investing you in the movie, where you feel like you're with her in the movie. Anyway, and so so now I'm curious. So this is how it's affecting what I'm working on. How does this movie affect what you're working on? Because that's
Arrival came out in 2016. I didn't watch it in theaters. Because I didn't have the money to do so. And so, but my brother did, I believe, and he kept
bugging you.
Yeah, because he knew I wanted to watch it.
Yeah.
But I just didn't have the time or the money to do so, to go to the theaters at that point. And so, when I finally watched it, I had it's interesting because this movie I watched for the first time. I didn't watch it sitting down. I watched it while making dinner and then doing all these other things. And so...
I cannot do that.
Right. So I'm one of these people that multitasks a lot.
Yeah, like you can do that.
And so... But
I just can't do that with movies.
As I was watching this movie, I knew, like, this is a really good film, right? And I remember at the end of it, I was so blown away by the fact that this is an alien invasion story, but it's the alien invasion story that is probably more appropriate and more real than any other alien invasion story that we have.
Yes.
Right? Because it's about the fundamentals of human society and really the fundamentals of relationship.
Well, and this is how we would do it. I feel like
language.
This is how it would work, unless the aliens came in shooting at us.
Right.
Like this is how we would probably handle it.
But we know from the
CIA
and the former Israeli defense minister who recently announced that we do have aliens, and they don't want to interact with us because we keep killing each other. So, that's been interesting. So, anyways, but this kind of thing where we're talking about interaction and language and understanding. It was the first time that I kind of sat back and I just went, I want to write like this. I don't want to write violent sci-fi stuff. I want to write stuff like this. and it just became
like Speaker for the Dead and Xenocide. Did you read the rest of them, or did you just read Ender's Game?
I think Speaker for the Dead was still quite violent.
Yes, but it started because Ender's Game is it has violence.
Well, they all have violence.
They all have violence, but there was more of an emphasis on entertainment with the first one. And Speaker for the Dead and Xenocide are a little bit more philosophical, a little bit more broader picture.
So when I read Speaker, I haven't read Zeno.
You haven't read Xenocide?
Genocide.
Xenocide.
Obviously, I've read Ender's Game.
I really liked Xenocide. I think you would appreciate it.
Okay. I mean, I might. I don't know. But when I read Speaker for the Dead, it didn't really make me want to write like it, right? I admire Orson Scott Card. It's not that I don't admire his works or anything like that, but just it didn't make me want to write like him. It just made me kind of go, oh, this is an interesting philosophical point.
I feel like it made me think about things in a way that I wanted to think about things. And so he gave me like further rungs up the ladder to climb. Right. So even though I don't want to replicate the ladder, I appreciate it and it will help me later on.
So when I started watching this, that is actually, so I have this story called Ruben Nostra.
Yeah.
That's actually when I stopped writing it.
Interesting.
Because I realized I didn't really want to write that kind of story anymore, because I mean, growing up, I write all these stories about fantasy and science fiction, aliens invading Earth, elves fighting orcs, all this kind of stuff, right? But when I read this, or not read, sorry, when I watched this, I kind of sat back and went, this is much more what I would want to do rather than what I've done before. And so I actually stopped that story because of that. And then afterwards we met, and then I explained that story to you. You got excited about that story.
I was like, wait, I really, really like Ruben Nostra. Like,
I think it's a good story.
It's a really good story.
But
it is definitely more action-based than this movie. This movie is very much about characters and relationship. Yeah. And that is the focal point versus the action. And most alien movies, it's about the action.
And as we go towards
like we have Godzilla
the top
versus,
of my list.
Is it King Kong? Is that the movie coming out?
Yeah. Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that.
I'm
Godzilla.
not. I'm excited for everyone else being excited about it.
I just rewatched the 2014 Godzilla.
Oh dear.
No, that one's actually really good. Have you seen it?
I have not.
Oh man, we need to talk about this afterwards. All right, so
my dad has seen it and he really liked it. So.
Yeah. So we'll talk about it afterwards. Sorry, guys. Just because of time, we're gonna start wrapping things up here a little bit. But yeah, that's how it influenced the way that I'm writing now.
That makes sense. Because when we started talking, you did start coming back to Ruben Nostra a little bit more. So
no, I only came back to Ruben Nostra because that was right, because I was explaining the type of story that I was writing before to you. And so yeah, I mean, not that I'm probably gonna revisit it, but it's gonna be different when I revisit it. Yeah.
I'm curious now because the world that he created for that and the characters that he created were really, 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 really cool. And I got really annoyed. Like we have both gotten really annoyed at the other person for like stopping on specific. He only has like one of my stories that he genuinely is like, no, I want you to write this so we can. So I like if you don't suck, like I like to read it. And I have a few of his that I genuinely.
Oh right, yeah, I remember that story. Okay.
Yeah, it has dragons.
Yeah, right, the dragon story.
You like the dragon?
That was a good story.
Yeah, because it's a.
Maybe we should do a podcast just about that story.
Maybe I'll actually finish it. That's actually okay. I have a favorite story that I love working on, and the dragon one is like my second favorite story, and it's something where everyone wants me to everyone that I've hey, here's this story and this story and this story and this. I'll go through like 3 or 4 stories, and they're like, can you work on the dragon one? And I'm like, this is I have like 6 or 7 people now who I've said this to, and they're like, hey, I have this story and it's really cool and I'm excited. And they're like, why haven't you finished it yet? And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Anyway, so yeah.
All right. Yeah. So that's it from us from Arrival. Unfortunately, we didn't get to the language part. We might do a part 2 for this just because it's such a deep movie, and I would love to do the language part. I want to watch.
And I could watch Memento and Interstellar in between this, and then come back with we could talk about more things.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So, but
we'll see.
We've come to that point where we want to draw from the hat. And I believe it's your turn
to draw. So Isaac needs to shake the top hat.
There's very few cards in here now, so it's not like I'm shaking very much.
There
we go. All right. Hope you guys can hear that.
Shuffle,
and then, drum roll. What is our next movie?
Ooh. Okay, it is Prince of Egypt.
Prince of
I'm
Egypt.
excited.
Okay,
This
cool.
is gonna be fun.
Prince of Egypt is our next movie.
Prince of Egypt. I'm
All
excited.
right.
This is cool.
That was from 1999.
Something like that.
Something like that.
I knew it came out at the same time as Shrek.
I have no idea when
Because
Shrek came out.
what they did is it was the punishment movie. So when you failed at Prince of Egypt, they would send you over to Shrek.
In your school?
No, in DreamWorks. DreamWorks. This was an actual thing in the studios.
Really? I didn't know
if you
that.
messed up or they didn't want you to work on, because Prince of Egypt was like the golden child.
Right.
Shrek was like the naughty little side, like black sheep
But
of the
Shrek
family.
did better than Prince of Egypt. Yeah.
Yes. Well, but Prince of Egypt, in a purely aesthetic way, is the more beautiful movie.
Sure.
It is the more pretty, graceful. Like it's very aesthetic versus the aesthetic of Shrek has defined a generation.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're just two completely different films, but that
Right.
was the punishment child.
I mean, Shrek was meant to be that.
It was the bad child. Prince of Egypt was
Makes
the good
sense.
child, the golden child, and then Shrek was the bad child, which makes complete sense. So
All right.
anyway,
So we'll be doing Prince of Egypt next week. But before we end, we will always have to come to our dime segment, where Rosemary really comes up with a quote or a joke.
Yes.
Is today a quote or a joke?
It is both.
Oh, it is.
It's both.
It's one
It's
that's both, or
no. It is
it's-
both a quote and a joke.
You have
There's
two things. Okay.
I do.
All right.
I was having too much fun, and I was like, I haven't done two in a while, I think. And so I was like,
Let's
I want to do two. We're going to do the quote first.
Yeah.
No. So the quote is by Charlotte Erickson, and it's from
Who's that?
Empty Roads and Broken Bottles. It's she's a poet,
All
I
right.
believe. And so this is actually more of a poem than a quote, but it is a quote from a poem. But
Watch her be like some photographer.
That would be really messed up.
And you just
I
outed
don't
her
know.
as a
Okay,
poet.
I don't
I'm
know.
just kidding.
I don't know who Charlotte Erickson is. I was looking up things, and it just struck me with this movie, and so I was like, oh, I like. So, the quote is, "So for now, I will miss you like I'll never see you again, and the next time I see you, I will kiss you like I'll never kiss you again, and when I fall asleep beside you, I will fall asleep as if I'll never wake up again, because I don't know if I will. I don't know if I will." So, and it's called "I Will Love You Like the World Is Ending." And I was
Right,
just like,
that's
I really
appropriate.
like it. And so it fit this film of that's kind of how she's going to go forward with the rest of her life right now, is the appreciation, like, even though she knows that she has tomorrow, she knows what it'll bring, and the pain and the love and the joy and
Right. She turns from that
everything.
competitiveness against the world, and she becomes
she
more,
embraces it.
Right.
She embraces her world. And so and then on a much lighter, less heartfelt note, the joke is,
Oh, joy.
oh joy. It's, so what if I can't spell Armageddon? It's not the end of the world. It makes me happy.
Very punny. Very
It
punny.
makes me happy, especially because like I don't know, the other, like I have there's a poem, When Tomorrow Wakes Up Without Me. I actually wrote a song after I read that poem the first time, and I really like that poem. But it's like, okay, like, hey, well, the song that I wrote is essentially like, hey, you need to like keep living your life, and so like even though we don't get to do all these things together, it's still okay. You still need to move on when tomorrow wakes up without me. And so it's just, anyway, so I love this vibe. I love this theme. It's like the end of the world, and so you need to live your life as if you're not going to wake up tomorrow. Everyone should live their life as if they're not going to wake up tomorrow, whether it's guaranteed or not.
I thought you were talking about the joke, the
and
Armageddon
so
joke.
so what if you can't spell Armageddon? It's not the end of the world. It's beautiful.
Very punny.
Anyway, so that's the dime
Speaking
segment for
of moving
today.
on, we have to move on from our podcast. Thank you guys for listening. If you would do us the favor of liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel, we would really appreciate it. And if you want to interact with us, we would also really love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. If you think that my laughter is weird, tell me. If you think that Isaac's laugh is mocking and annoying, please feel free to tell him, as I've told him several times. Not recently, though. It's actually it's cute. It's fun. It's silly.
That was a really
I've
weird
gotten used
backpedal.
to it. It was more like the circle of like, I enjoy your laughter as well as much, like almost as much as, like I enjoy it more than I enjoy your mockery, but sometimes they're like the same thing. And so I just appreciate them both.
All right. And with that, we are signing off. We'll see you guys next week with Prince of Egypt.
Woo!
Bye-bye.
Bye.
despite knowing the journey and where it leads. I embrace it. And I welcome every moment.